Let's edit this text together using ReallyWrite. Take a moment to read through the text. This text was most likely written by researchers for the public. I found it at the botanical gardens where I live. They're trying to explain to us a little bit about the project that they're working on now, but it was really hard for me to read through. So I thought we could take a look at it together and try to figure out what's making this so difficult. In order to start thinking about how the reader will perceive a text that you're writing, we first have to try to put ourselves a little bit into the reader's mind. This was on a big poster at the Botanical Gardens, so we can imagine that you've got people and families walking around in the botanical gardens. They're enjoying the plants, they're enjoying nature, they're looking at all the different plants that they don't normally get to see. It's a nice relaxing day, and then they see some information up on a board. This is the same kind of situation that you often get at museums. For example, you're walking around, you'd like to receive some information easily on what it is that you're looking at. And then we see the title, Revolution in Plant Evolution. And plant is in parentheses. And then you wonder, why is plant in parentheses? Is it about plants or not about plants? What happens is that here in the Netherlands, there's a way of using parentheses that if you put parentheses around that word plant, that you are supposed to read it as with the word plant and without the word plant. So now somehow I'm supposed to read it as revolution in evolution, evolution in general, and revolution in the evolution of plants. But that's unfortunately not how we use parentheses in English. Parentheses in English just tell us that you can skip over the word in parentheses. You don't have to read it. So now I'm still a bit confused about this title and what it means. They're trying to play on the similarity of the words revolution and evolution, which could be funny. But in this case, it just makes me wonder, what are we talking about? So now I start to read the text, and I want to get some context, and I want to know specifically at the beginning, quickly what's going on. And I read since 1998. Well, that's great. That gives me context. That gives me time. But then I see some wordiness at the beginning of the sentence. There has been taking place a revolution in biology concerning, okay, more wordiness that doesn't show me a clear relationship, the evolutionary lineage of the plant kingdom. If I use the techniques that I know of to reduce wordiness and to make sentences and structures clear, I'm going to remove the wordiness here, taking place. Empty verb, wordiness. I'm going to remove this and try to find a clearer relationship. I'm going to look for a word that everybody's familiar with. Hey, here's one right here. Let's try biology. Everybody knows about biology. Hey, and now look at my zombie noun, revolution. Can revolution also be a verb? It can. It can be revolutionize. Now we have, since 1998, biology has revolutionized the evolutionary lineage of the plant kingdom. We still have a lot of noun, preposition noun at the beginning. I'm wondering if there's a way to make this more accessible as well. What is the evolutionary lineage? Could we also say biology has revolutionized our understanding of how plants evolved, or our grasp of how plants evolved? So this is one meaning, and this is a bit of a shorter sentence. Biology has revolutionized our grasp of how plants evolved. We could also have made that sentence differently. We could have also started with we. If we didn't really know what we were talking about, we can always go back to we and try to figure out what's happening. We could say, we have been trying to determine the evolutionary lineage of the plant kingdom, which is a revolution in biology. Now we're still starting with familiar information, and we're talking about what we've been doing, and then we still keep evolutionary lineage of the plant kingdom, and then we introduce the idea that it's a revolution there at the end. Now, I didn't write this original text, and I'm still a bit unclear on what exactly they were trying to say. So I can't really know which one is correct, but I can know that there are many possibilities, many different ways of interpreting it. Now, if we look at the next sentence, we see a long list of prepositional phrases at the beginning. through molecular research of the genetic material of plant cells, for example, the DNA of chloroplasts, and then the main sentence has an empty subject and an empty verb. Much has been clarified about the mutual relationships between different groups of plants. Whenever I see an empty subject and an empty verb, I know I need to figure out who are the players in this sentence, who are the actors, who is doing what. And here again, I could make different choices. I could say that this group of international scientists, the APG group, the Angiosperm phylogeny group, could be one player. I could also say researchers in general could be the player or the actor. What would that look like? Well, first, I could name the group of international scientists and then tell the reader or the visitor to the botanical gardens what they're called, the Angiosperm phylogeny group, or APG, that this group has been working to establish the ancestral history of plants, and then to say they've been researching, again, the people, and what they've been doing, researching, people doing things, the genetic material of plant cells like the DNA of chloroplasts, to clarify the relationships between groups of plants. But I could also say researchers in general have employed molecular studies of plant cell genetics, especially chloroplast DNA, to clarify how different plant groups are related. There we take the zombie-noun relationship and we make it into a verb. And then we could introduce the group of international scientists. The APG project exemplifies this research. But then, of course, you need to explain who this group is later on in the text. We can't just use the acronym without explaining it. Now, I think I like the first option a little bit better, so I'm going to continue with that option. Looking at what comes next, a well-known example of this type of research is APG. Okay, well, we already introduced the Angiosperm phylogeny group, so I don't need that anymore. And then I have, ultimately, all scientific discoveries have led to a new classification of the plant kingdom, the so-called APG system. So-called, that means that I shouldn't take it seriously. We don't want to use so-called in this way. What can we do instead? We can start with the researchers again, the group, and we could try to get this idea of led to a new classification. You can actually use a verb to describe that. You could say they reclassified. So you could have something like, their discoveries have prompted us to reclassify the plant kingdom into what is now known as the APG system. And that gives me this here. I've now introduced the APG system. And then the original text told me in 2016, the fourth and so far final version of the system was developed. I could also say the fourth and latest version of the system was developed in 2016. That gives me the same information. And then the next part of the text tells me, with the fourth version of the APG system, the relationships between most groups of plants have largely been untangled, but then I'm noticing the passive voice verb at the end of the sentence. I want to get that verb close to the subject. Well, then I need to figure out what the subject is. How about, in this latest version, the APG has mostly untangled the relationships between most groups of plants. Now, in the last sentence, therefore, no major changes are expected. We have a lot of passive voice. We start with changes, which is new information. We have a long list of prepositional phrases. And then all of a sudden, we introduce this idea of a time machine that I didn't hear before. Where did the time machine come from? I don't know. So I need to look at the information here, and I need to ask myself, who is doing what? Are there any actors? Are there any human actors in this sentence? And what are we doing? And what are our expectations? What do we expect? Can I put this in the active voice? Well, that would look a little bit like this. We will probably be able to use this APG system for quite some time because we don't expect our understanding of plant evolution to change anytime soon. I don't need to mention a time machine because nobody introduced a time machine to me earlier, so the time machine comes out of the blue. This is typical of an idea that's in the reader's mind that didn't get expressed. An idea that's in the writer's mind that didn't get expressed to the reader very clearly and suddenly comes out of the blue in the text. Notice that we still have some zombie nouns like our understanding of plant evolution. But we have a bit of an easier structure in this sentence. We will probably be able to use this APG system for quite some time. And then another structure that starts with because, another subject, verb, object structure. So on the whole, we're trying to change this text into more subject, verb, object structure, less passive voice, more who is doing what. And if we compare what we started with, our original had a clarity score of 45, a word count of 160, and a longest sentence of 31 words, and we had a lot of highlighting on the text. There were a number of issues to work through. Our new version has a word count of 138, a longest sentence of 27 words, and a clarity score of 70. This version has more humans as subjects, has more SVO structure, and I think tries to meet the reader where they're at, perhaps a little bit better than the original. Of course, there are many ways to revise a text, and this is just one way that I thought about as I was trying to figure out what this text actually said. As I look at this text, I think it's also interesting to look at this down here, this word cloud, to make sure that the words that I'm using are consistent. So I can see that I'm using plant and plants a lot. I'm using system, revolution, and relationships. Okay, those are a lot of my keywords. I always want to check the word cloud to see if my keywords are consistent throughout my text, if the keywords appear strongly in the word cloud, because sometimes when I'm writing a text, I might not actually refer to my keywords enough, thinking that the reader already knows them. And I might need to then use the word cloud to help me realize that I need to emphasize certain words a little bit more. What I'm noticing here is that I've got plant in the singular and plants in the plural. So then I actually want to go back to the text and make sure that the singular and the plural are both okay. Here I'm using plant as an adjective a number of times, and it can't have an S on it because I say plant kingdom, plant cells, and again plant kingdom. So then it's okay. Every time I use plants, I use it as the plural. And when I use it as an adjective, I use it in the singular. I hope that this video has helped you see how you can use ReallyWrite to question and to revise the text that you're working on to try to make it clearer. Good luck.